All right, good afternoon, everybody. I see we still have some folks signing in, so we're going to get started here in just a minute. But welcome to Comfort Institute's part 2 of our 3-part series. Today we're going to talk about KPIs. I know this is a topic that is near and dear to Brad Hohn's heart. He's very passionate about this. I know normally this is a topic that he would cover in 2 days, but he's going to keep this kind of high level, keep up a nice fast pace. You guys are going to want to have a pad of paper and a pen handy because we're going to cover some numbers, and you'll want to take some good notes. We are recording today's webinar, so it will be available to you if you want to go back and review some of the numbers and data that we cover. While we're waiting for folks to sign in, I am going to go ahead and launch a couple questions we'd like to have you guys answer so we can get to know who's listening today. So the first one will be on the screen right now. Alrighty, very good. Looks like most of you have answered. I'll give it a couple more seconds. I'm going to ask you one more question. Then I'm going to introduce Mr. Brad Hohn to you, and we'll get started. Okay, so the second question should be on the screen for you there. I'll let you answer that while I do an introduction here for Brad. For those of you who don't recognize my voice, I'm Tracy Martin. I am the Director of Member Development here at Comfort Institute. And with me is Mr. Brad Hohn, who is our Director at Comfort Institute. So back early in the beginning of Brad's career, he started off as a bailiff and then eventually became a sheriff's deputy. Sadly, though, he was injured in the line of duty and stumbled his way into the HVAC industry. So HVAC industry has become home to him. Brad has worked at a number of distributors in the sort of Midwest, I guess, region of the country. He's worked with service experts. He's worked with ARS, Ferguson, and he's managed about $12 million in gross revenues in total. So he's well experienced. He's the kind of guy that is, as I said at the beginning here, he's passionate about what he's going to share with you today. He's knowledgeable, and he's contagious. So get ready, guys. As I said, please get out some pencil and paper. I think you're going to want to take some careful notes. And I see we have a question already. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, okay. Thank you, Marcy. All right, Brad, would you like to add any information to your introduction while I get this going here?
No, just excited to be here today. I know that last month we had an overwhelming attendance for part 1, and I'm excited to get this one going because I know that what we're going to talk about today can significantly take charge of your company and really take your companies to a different level. So give us 1 second here and we will get started.
Guys, I apologize. We're having a little technical glitch. Give me 1 second to fix it. Okay, Brad, take it away.
Okay. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for joining the webinar today in the middle of your summer push. Like I said earlier, we had an overwhelming attendance for our first part 1 in this series, which was the maintenance agreement is the lifeline of your company. If you did not attend that class, please email me and I'll make sure that you get to see a recorded version of it. So this next segment in our summer series is very imperative in the success of your company. These webinars are less than an hour that we're doing. This webinar today is normally a multiple day training, like Tracy said a little bit ago. In my experience with working and being in mixed groups across the country, with working, like Tracy said, at Ferguson or at Famous Supply when I was in the Midwest, calling on hundreds of contractors across the East Coast, the majority of small to mid-sized contractors that I've worked with are not departmentalized. And again, we're going to talk about departmentalization and what that means. Some of you are probably sitting out there going, what do you mean by departmentalized, Brad? Of course, we're going to cover that in depth. But I want this and hope this opens your eyes and gives you some awareness on the importance of knowing your numbers, knowing exactly the kinds of things you need to know each and every day in your business, knowing what the industry KPIs or benchmarks, key performance indicators is what the acronym stands for. A lot of people call them benchmarks, and then of course the importance of departmentalization in your business. In with that awareness brings questions on how to take your company to a new level. My contact information, of course, will be available at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to call me or email me, and we can dive into this together. So, of course, don't get scared. There's a picture of Brad. I know Tracy looks amazing, but after this webinar is over, you will receive a complimentary recording link so that you can rewatch the material at your pace, take more notes, gather your questions for me in a follow-up conversation at a later time. Again, watch that link, take your time, gather your thoughts, contact me. And also there's a survey at the end that we would greatly appreciate if you take that for us. So this is just going to be a quick recap of our webinar from May, maintenance agreements, which is the lifeline of your company. We know that the maintenance agreement is responsible for $800 per year per customer. I'm going to go through this very quick because a lot of you were on this. If you were not on this maintenance agreement webinar, please email me and we will send you a link for that. So a mentor of mine, a lot of you probably know his name is Ron Smith, told me that the main key in owning a business is to get and keep customers. Think about that. How many times in the home improvement industry across our country, no matter what line, whether it's roofing, concrete, you name it, it's one and done. The key to our business is to get and keep customers for life. And the maintenance agreement is that path that can do that for you. So you see on this business model here that we have put together, in the far left-hand side, you see replacement sales in a bubble. You will see the close rates of 31% for a non-MA maintenance agreement customer and 86% on a replacement sales opportunity. 31% closes for a marketed replacement lead that comes into your business. Those marketed leads, there's probably going to be 3-4 other people that they call, 3 or 4 of your competitors that are going to go out on that call. 86% is for that maintenance agreement customer that is already a customer for life and is calling you for a replacement lead. Which would you rather send your sales associates out to? Again, contact me if you missed this webinar from last month and I'll get you the information. So let's go over the basics. Before we talk about industry key performance indicators and departmentalization, I would like to briefly go over some basics with you, and that's the financial statements. Trust me, a lot of us do not like this part of the business. We like to sell stuff, we like to fix stuff, we like to find solutions in people's homes, we like to motivate our associates, but without knowing your individual company numbers, it could be detrimental to your business. Think about this. It's kind of like flying a plane without a navigation system or a fuel gauge. You may not like where you end up. So I know there will be questions that come up as I move along in this webinar today, that please feel free to type your questions and we will see them here If I do not cover your question, I will answer them during the Q&A at the end of this, or we'll follow up and I'll call you or email you and talk about whatever question you may have. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, this webinar is a multiple day course. Usually I'm going to squeeze a lot of information into 1 hour. Do not get discouraged if you do not understand something. Please, one of the keys to being successful in anything you do is having an open mind, be coachable, and not be afraid to ask for help. Let's get started. So, financial statements. There's 3 basic pieces to the financial statements. That's your income statement, which is your profit and loss, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement. I'm going to touch briefly on some of the financial items that as owners and leaders, you need to know. The growth, the consistency, the success of your company is riding on the fact that you intimately know and understand the following items. Again, your accountant should have a grasp on these financial statements and be providing them to you consistently. So the profit and loss statement is your report card. It gives you the pulse of your business. We're going to cover today all the components that make up the P&L, the profit and loss statement. You will not be an expert after this webinar today, but hopefully it will bring an awareness to the forefront that you need to work on this aspect of your business as much as you do at your particular craft. Okay? Like I said, a lot of great companies that I have coached, consulted with, they were absolutely amazing technicians. They were great salesmen. They were great installers who decided to start their own company. They were great plumbers, great electricians, whatever it may be, but they lacked business acumen, and there's nothing wrong with that. These types of webinars, trainings that you may do with other companies, these are things that make us better. Always strive to be great at whatever your craft is. So as owners and leaders, I'm sure you've had someone in our industry ask you at one time or another, hey, what's your gross margin? How are your margins? I know this has happened to you because it's happened to me. In this equation right here on the slide, you see that sales is the revenue dollars that come into your business. Sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit or gross margin. Direct cost is the cost of goods sold there in red. Those are the items that it takes to complete a job. And we're going to go over all aspects of these individual line items for you going through this. So sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit, or called gross margin when you're talking in a percentage form. And then you take your gross profit dollars minus overhead equals your net profit before interest and taxes. So let's take a peek at a simple P&L. Here's an example of a profit and loss statement. Again, we'll identify the following slides, all the categories for each line item moving ahead. But here's a $1 million company that did $1 million last year in top line revenue. They had $600,000 in cost of goods sold, what it took to get the job completed. Again, I'm going to cover all those items today. They were left with $400,000 in gross profit dollars. Also communicated in our industry, when someone asked you, hey, Brad, do you know what your gross margin is? Well, you know what? From this financial statement right here, I can tell them that, you know what? My operating margin, my gross margin is 40%. Take the gross profit dollars of $400,000 minus your overhead of $270,000, left me with $130,000 of net profit dollars. Now, unfortunately, in our industry today, the average net profit for an HVAC, plumbing, electrical contractor is less than 3%. So double-digit net profit is what we need to be striving to hit. And there's a book out there that many of you probably know very well that says you are entitled to 25% net profit, and that was a book written by Ron Smith called HVAC Spells Wealth. As we go through our meeting today, these numbers will come together for you, so hang in there with me. So these formulas are simple in knowing your company percentages. Most company accounting software will produce your monthly, quarterly, annual financial reports with percentages associated with your numbers. This is just a screen that you can take a picture of real quick, or again, you'll have access to it in a recorded link later. But cost of sales divided by the sales dollar total revenue gives you the percentage of your cost of sales. Again, the gross profit divided by sales gives you gross margin, and so on. Let's talk about what makes up your profit and loss statement. First of all, where does your revenue come from? This is pretty simple. It comes from your demand service, your no heat, no cool calls. It comes from your replacements, which in most of our business, we know that usually makes up the majority of our revenue. Industry benchmarks, KPI says that it should be approximately 70 to 75% of the total revenue that comes into your business, and with average tickets anywhere from, unfortunately, $5,000 for some contractors to $14,000, $15,000, $16,000 average tickets. You can see why the replacement division is so important to a company and the lifeline of succeeding. Revenue also comes from indoor air quality products and accessories, and also home performance. We'll talk about that briefly today also. It also comes for service agreements, your maintenance agreement program. If you are a diversified company, it could come from your plumbing division. I know we have some plumbers on the call today. Some friends of mine are on. We also know it comes from electrical as well. So the second item on your profit and loss statement is the operating cost, or cost of goods sold. You'd be surprised how many of these classes I've done in the past and have asked contractors that are sitting in a room with me live, and they don't quite know what their cost of goods are, or everything that's entailed in this. You see parts and material, we know that. We know the equipment, we know labor, subcontracting fees if you need help with electrical, putting a panel in, the extended warranty, equipment rental if you need, to rent a lift or something, permits, warranty. Warranty, depending on your historical profit and loss statements, if tracked, could be from 1% to 3% if it's set aside in a reserve account for warranty calls on installed jobs of up to a year. Some guys do up to 2 years. Buy down. Buy down is your finance charges with whomever you are utilizing to finance your sold jobs in the field. Here's a very, very important key. Make sure you know, as owners and leaders, managers, sales managers, whatever it is that's on the call, make sure you know and approve what offering you are allowing your sales associates, selling techs, whatever it is, knowing and approving what they're allowed to use in the field. Some financing offers could cost you up to 15%. And if you are not job costing each sold job that's installed, you may not know what is being offered out in the field by your associates, and this will kill your gross profit, your gross margin. If you have questions about job costing, please contact me and we can talk about that. Sales commissions are also included in this, and sales salaries if you have an associate that's on a salary plus commission. And then allocated fringes. Allocated fringes, some people refer to it as labor burden, is the vacation holiday package, what your associate is offered, the FICA, the federal state unemployment taxes, workers' compensation, 401k, medical. On average, a good rule of thumb, depending on what your company offers, is 25 to 30% is a good rule of thumb of what it costs in your labor burden. So if I hire an associate at $10 an hour, they're really making about $13 an hour when you roll all this into it. Third on your P&L is the overhead categories. The majority of small to mid-sized companies do not assign overhead to a division in relation to total sales volume. So overhead is the cost of doing business and varies in relation to sales. Overhead is difficult to directly assign to specific departments. Larger companies do that. It can be a great tool to build your budget around. So what I mean by overhead being directly assigned to specific departments is if I have a residential replacement company and it does $1 million in revenue, of that $750,000 is residential replacement. That's 75% of my revenue. So therefore, some companies would take 75% of the total overhead and allocate it to that division. Not many companies do it that way anymore, but there are some very sophisticated ones that do it this way, but it's not the norm. There are five main categories in overhead that your operating accounting system should already have set up for your companies. If not, please feel free to contact me. I have a sample chart of accounts that will fit into anybody's business, but heck, you can Google those as well and find them. So let's take a look at each category. In marketing, you've got Google, you've got social media, website, SEO, search engine optimization, direct mail, you can read them, TV, radio, internet, home shows, you name it. A lot of different ways to go to market and marketing. And we're going to go over the KPI, the benchmark that is set of how much of your total annual spend should be towards marketing. Here we have a snapshot of your employee costs. That's the second category in overhead. I'm not going to go through each one and every of these because it'll just take too long, but you get an idea that in this category, you'll have all the wages for your non-field employees, uniforms, training, 401k for the company. You see that. Third, building and equipment. This is your rent, utilities, telephone. These do not change. They usually do not fluctuate whatsoever. Your repairs do, shop supplies will, maintenance, but those other ones do not change. They are fixed overhead. Vehicle, leases, insurance, license, registration, fuel, repair, maintenance, and depreciation. I know some companies put fuel into cost of goods sold. This is just one way of doing it. I put it into overhead category. And administrative. This is a smaller portion of the overhead categories as far as a percentage of what it's going to run your company, but you can see here all the items that go into this category. So what is departmentalization? I know a lot of you are sitting back asking and wondering, revenue and operating costs all aligned in its own department. Think about that. Revenue and operating costs aligned in its own department. The division of an organization into sections. Departmentalization is usually based on operating functions. So, departmentalization, easy for me to say, allows you and your leaders to manage a division. A division with industry key performance indicators as a guideline to strive for, recognize, and improve upon your current numbers. So, why departmentalization? Again, it allows you to evaluate each department and product. It ensures accountability. It allows you to hold managers, leaders, coworkers accountable. The folks on this webinar that know me hear me talk about accountability all the time. I believe firmly that in our world today, the lack of accountability is what's causing mediocrity across our country. And I'd like to be one of those guys in our industry that can help change the accountability section of it. Departmentalization allows you to compensate managers, leaders, coworkers on their performance. It defines your business mix, aids in budgeting and pricing. And remember this phrase, good people want to be held accountable. Think about that one. Good people want to be held accountable. How do we get extraordinary results from ordinary people? Departmentalization is a plan. You have to put together and build a strategic business plan. Then you need to implement it. Then you need to execute it. And then you need to hold that department accountable. And after that, then you need to measure and track, because what's not measured cannot be managed. And then we review the process and make adjustments where we need to. So let's continue. How do you departmentalize? You choose departments. What type of work are you doing in your company? Analyze the coworkers working for you and the jobs they do. Common departments in our industry: residential service, light commercial service. Those are going to be the no heat, no cool calls. Residential replacement and light commercial replacement. Those are the big dollar tickets where you're going out and actually replacing equipment. Residential and light commercial maintenance, the annual tune-ups that you hopefully get and keep that customer for life. Residential new construction, plumbing, indoor air quality and home performance, and electrical. Those are some of the departments that you could have that you need to know the individual numbers, and we're going to talk about that in your business. My P&Ls were always broken down into these separate departments. My managers and I knew exactly what our numbers were on a daily basis. You may ask yourself, why would Brad want to know this on a daily basis? Simple. If a department was struggling for some reason in a certain month, I wanted to know immediately. Why? Because then as a team, we could be proactive in fixing that department rather than waiting until the profit and loss statement came out after the 5th, the 6th, 7th business day of the following month. If we don't know our numbers on a daily basis, how can we fix something? We're just waiting for the inevitable to happen, and that's not a good feeling. I've coached and consulted with so many companies in the past that took all their revenue for all these departments and lumped it into one overall company revenue. First off, we have no idea where the revenue is coming from like that. Secondly, all of their cost of goods were lumped into one category or department also. Think about that. Thirdly, this does not give you a fighter's chance at knowing how to fix that department if it's struggling at all. I would have to say 7 out of 10 contractors I've called on over the years operated in this fashion. We have to change our industry and help our contractors get away from an average net profit that's less than 3%. Don't be afraid to ask for help, no matter who it is, because I'm telling you, there's tons of companies, tons of people out there that are willing to help you and make you better. So you need to identify each department in your business. Common departments in the industry, of course, we talked about these: residential replacement, service. I like to use these acronyms for the KPI cards that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. New construction, and these are just letter codes that you can look at moving forward. So you need to set up a chart of accounts. Your current operating accounting software should have these already in place, whether it be QuickBooks, ServMan, SAWin, SuccessWare, whatever it may be. This is a very large chart of accounts. Your company does not need to have all of these, but this is just a quick guideline snapshot of what you could have and track. Identify what your company does and proceed accordingly. Do not overcomplicate this. But you need to start somewhere, and then your processes can always be fine-tuned in the future. Remember, blocking and tackling is the key to success, and the key is to get engaged and start the process ASAP. So this again is a large view of a cost of goods sold that would be used in your chart of accounts. We went over the main pieces earlier, but this just gives you, if some people want to break down their cost of sales from the flat rate parts and the flat rate labor, warranty parts, warranty labor, and then callback parts and labor. So all of these things can be done in your accounting software. It's just a matter of how deep you want to dig. So revenue, cost of sales, and overhead. Once you've gotten all the accounts established, you will want to assign numbers to these. Again, these numbers are used for accounting purposes. QuickBooks and other software that I covered all have these, and most of them already have them numbered and ready. Get with your accounting professional and controller, and they will help get those numbers set up for you. All right, so the next slide contains benchmarks, key performance indicators that have been put together by industry experts that have been around HVAC for years. These gentlemen are household names for our industry that you all may know. Again, these KPIs are guidelines for you to strive for. Some of you may already be exceeding the metrics that I'm going to show you, and that's great. If you do not know what your numbers are, you cannot put a plan in place to improve on them. So let's take a peek. So there you have and this would be a good one to take a screenshot with your phone so that you can have it in your pocket. And I mean, if you work with me, I've got one that's laminated that fits in your wallet, and it's a great tool to have. If you're out in the field and one of your guys calls you and needs a boiler priced, he needs a geothermal price, and you don't have it as part of your system-based pricing, and as it used to be called, and some do still call it, your cookbook pricing. It's nice to know where you need to price your product. All of these numbers are expressed in percentage of total sales volume. So the black font is your revenue departments along the top horizontally. So you see residential service, residential replacement, RR, those were the acronyms we went over earlier. Commercial replacement, the fourth one to the right at the top, residential maintenance, commercial maintenance, and so on. In the far right column before the blue font, you will see the total column that will have your percentages for each cost of goods category rolled into a company percentage. So you will see across the board when you're looking at your financial statement for the month and you're looking at parts, it should be no more than 10% of the total revenue of your company. Labor should be 14%, equipment 19%, and so on. But individually, if you look at the far second to left column, RS, so let's say you do $100,000 in residential service revenue for the month. You would know that 11%, $11,000 is what you probably should have had as a cost for your parts, $22,000 for labor, and so on and so forth down the list. And the total gross margin that you should have made on that was $60,000 on $100,000 in revenue. So these numbers here are what my companies that I've ever been a part of. It didn't matter if I was running a $27 million distribution company. I had benchmarks for every line item that I shot for. It didn't matter if I was running a $13 million replacement company. I knew what my numbers were, and I knew exactly where they were each and every month so that I could adjust accordingly and be profitable and make the desired net profit, not only that my company set forth for me, but my individual goals. So in the blue font on the right, you will see overhead categories as well as the desired net profit at the bottom right, which is 13%. Again, these are industry benchmarks. Yours may be more than this, and that's fine. But I would say as a minimum, you need to strive that if you do $1 million in revenue a year, your marketing should be no more than 5% of that. Your employee related should be 13%, and so on and so forth down the list. And then your overhead should be 29%. Now down there, I wish I had columns, in like an Excel spreadsheet that said column D13. You see 29 is overhead. Right to the left of that, you'll see 42. 42% gross margin is what ideal companies shoot for as a minimum. 42 total gross margin minus 29 equals that 13% net profit at the bottom right. Again, I know you're going to have questions. Feel free to email me. Email is probably the best way to get me to respond quickly. Feel free to reach out and we can talk about it. And again, the scary part, as I referred to earlier, most contractors do not know many of these numbers at all. If you are not departmentalized, you will never know if a certain department is the one that's holding you back from making double-digit net profits. Knowing your numbers for parts and equipment also help in establishing your pricing, negotiations with distributors and manufacturers, how you pay associates. Very, very important. So the numbers don't have to be right on, but are your numbers way off? And like I said, most of us, at one time in our careers or another, we didn't know our numbers. So we didn't know if we were right on or way off until you'd be surprised how many guys wait until they get their financial statements back from their accountant at the end of the year to find out if they made money or lost money for that year. It's a sad reality that we would love to be able to help change that in our industry. Here's where you start. So make departmentalization work for you. I've got some cost comparison models versus benchmarks. Take these following pages. I know you can't print them out, but you can take a screenshot of it, or you can watch the webinar later and make your own sheet, or contact me to put in your current metrics for each division as well as the KPI for each division, and the KPI for the gross or for the cost of goods sold. And then you compare them and track them monthly to see exactly how you're doing in your company. So I'm sure most of you know this, but labor is the key to success in your business. I'm going to cover that a little bit more here in a second. So this one here is residential service. This is your demand service, no heat, no cool division. And here are some industry benchmarks that have been established for years. The ideal company, parts and materials, is going to run 11% of the revenue for that month. Labor at 22%. And then you see allocated fringe benefits or labor burden, 6%, and then sales commissions, 1%. So the total direct cost would be 40%, and you should make 60% on every dollar that you bring to the table in that department. So why is labor the key to almost every department that we're going to talk about? Because unapplied labor is the killer. What is unapplied labor? You're sitting there asking the technician standing around after a training this morning for 30 minutes before he leaves for his first call. Sitting in his truck waiting for his next dispatch call because we don't have a process in place to immediately get him dispatched. Some operating systems, and the newer ones, of course, automatically dispatch the next call to a technician on his iPad once he has completed the previous call. As soon as he completes the call, automatically his next call pops up, so there should be very little unapplied labor of him sitting around waiting. How about this one? Hanging out the distributor waiting for parts because his truck was not properly stocked. What else happens when he's at the distributor? I know a lot of you are sitting there shaking your head and raising your hands. Yep, you guessed it. He's being recruited by someone else. And then these are just small examples of unapplied labor. We need to manage our techs. If you don't have GPSs in your trucks, it might be a good idea if you're at the size that you can afford to do that. It could go very well for you and help your overall net profits. One of the keys to driving your residential service and residential maintenance margins is to continually hold your technicians accountable. The biggest responsibility of management, in my opinion, is to make certain that our staff is trained properly, given the tools to succeed, set the expectation, and get out of their way and let them produce. With that being said, I think training is the path to success. When technicians are trained to treat home as a complete system and solve solutions for a homeowner, success will follow. Here's your residential replacement division. Take a snapshot of this with your phones. As you probably well know, the residential replacement department. Hey, I'm not sure how many of you do this. I job costed every residential replacement job that was installed the morning after. Think about that. Every job that was installed, I wanted it job costed the next morning. So at one time, I had 6 install crews, and we were doing 6 installs a day. It didn't take but an hour to job cost 6 jobs. So if you're installing one a day or two a day, it doesn't take that much time to find out exactly what's going on in your business. So we know that residential replacement department has the biggest impact on our net profits. So therefore, I wanted to make sure we were hitting all of the KPIs that I had set for our company. The morning after made the most sense for me because with today's technology, I knew the following. I knew exactly my equipment pricing by going online and looking at my manufacturer, my distributor costs for the equipment. I knew my material prices because the install team, rest assured, was held accountable to have that turned in the next morning after his job or that night when he came in back to the shop and turned it in, because he had properly stocked trucks 90% of the time and could mark off exactly what he used off that truck. Therefore, I knew exactly how much was used in parts and materials. I knew exactly what buy down was offered by the sale or was used by the salesman for that job if there was a financing offered. I knew what the labor was. I knew exactly what happened on that job the morning after, so that if I found out something was gone wrong the day before and the margin only came in at 32%, I wanted to find out why. And I could find out why exactly. And it usually stemmed back to something going wrong in the field, some unapplied labor, a sales associate that went rogue, that didn't happen very often, and used a buy down offer without getting approval that cost me 14, 15 points instead of the approved 6%. Some ideas to help your margins in this department: see your local distributor, manufacturer. See if they will job site deliver your equipment and materials to the job sites. It saves unapplied labor big time. Your techs or your installers don't have to go to the distributor to pick up the equipment. They can save a ton of time by just having it delivered to your jobs. And a lot of quality distributors and manufacturers will do that for you today. Here's your residential maintenance department. Again, look at that. What's the biggest component that can make or break this division? 30% labor. Labor is a huge component. Ideas to drive your residential maintenance department: consumers are driven to Google and search in indoor air quality and home performance more than ever. The numbers are staggering. I've heard some numbers. I don't have documentation to prove what these numbers are, but they say that I've been told by some people with manufacturers that the number is 4 times the search for HVAC equipment. It's 4 times as much for indoor air quality and home performance. So Comfort Institute, if you don't know, is the inventor of treating the home as a complete system. We can teach you all of that. We can help you take this knowledge, teach you to communicate home performance effectively to the consumer that explains the problem, then truly solves the problem for the homeowners. Think about this. How many of our technicians are consistently going into a home and looking at these items when they are in the home? Think about this. How many of your techs are doing this on every call they go on? They're looking at airflow. They're looking at balancing. They're looking at humidity control. Let's look at dust. Let's ask some questions and find out if the homeowner has asthma, allergies. When's the last time they had a duct cleaning? Do they have duct leakage going on in their home? Do they have pet odors, smoke odors? Do they have room heaters set up in their house? Do they have damp basements and crawl spaces? Right there, every technician that worked for me was trained to look at the home as a complete comfort system, not just going in to do a 30-minute tune-up and God forbid if he put a coat of wax on it before he left, because they did when they worked with me. Most of them won't. That's why if you're not doing before and after pictures of your equipment and getting serial numbers for your operating systems, if you have sophisticated operating systems, great tool to help hold your technicians accountable. So make your financials work, analyze your department, hit your benchmarks. Process improvement, let's practice. So residential service labor is too high. You're departmentalized. You know that your service labor is running high and you just can't figure out why. Get ready to take a screenshot of this. Maybe your flat rate pricing time is incorrect. Maybe your poor diagnostic skills and or troubleshooting skills of your technicians. Get with your distributors and manufacturers and have at least weekly meetings of training for your people. I recommend 2-3 days a week of training, and then you have their benchmark goals, sales meetings to help them. Excessive diagnostic times. Customer service reps are not gathering or communicating proper information. How about miscoding timesheets? Miscoding calls in your operating system? Doing multiple jobs and not charging for them. How many times have we seen a service work order come in and it has a single task on it? It was just the capacitor that they changed out. Come on. You couldn't take another 15, 20, 30 minutes to go through that whole system and find out exactly where the root cause came from? One of my pet peeves was single task service work orders. You want to see me turn beet red? That was one of them. How about technicians doing work for other departments and not charging? Sending texts out to installs because we have a callback and we're not charging for it. We have a warranty reserve for that. Miscoding in payroll. Here's another group. And you've heard me talk about accountability a few times today. That is the key ingredient missing in your business today, I would imagine. We're not collecting manufacturers' warranted money. How about that? Think about that. I've taken over companies or coached with companies that was $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 that was missing in a 6-month period that they weren't even churning in. I don't know this for a fact, but I would think that manufacturers are hoping that distributors that distribute their product, they're hoping that distributors don't have a process in place to file the correct manufacturer's warranty. And they're definitely hoping, I would think, maybe I'm wrong, that the contractor doesn't have a process in place to get their warranted money. Imagine the millions and millions of dollars that are missed every year by contractors because we don't have a process in place to get our manufacturer's warranted money coming to us. Uncontrolled overtime, poor dispatching, excessive callbacks, improper truck stock. Get with your local distributors and come up with a truck stock implementation process. You set a min-max that's barcoded, labeled on your truck. Distributor comes in, counts it once a week, whatever it is, and then it's replenished. And you hold the technician accountable for the stock that's on his truck. When service management doesn't understand its role in managing labor cost, that's huge. How about residential service parts materials cost too high? Our technicians held accountable for their truck inventory. Most companies I work with and have worked with do not do that. That's very, very important. Not to say that our guys are doing side work, but it's just a part of business. We hold accountable. If stuff comes up missing off your truck, you're accountable for it. You're held responsible for it. No standard truck stock. Get with your distributors and standardize the truck stock. If you need help with that, contact me. There's no poor truck restocking process. We talked about that. No PO process in place. No control in your warehouse. Unsecured. I took over a very large company probably about 10 years ago and doing a very large amount of revenue a year, 13 million, 14 million a year. And the warehouse was a free-for-all. First thing we did was turned it into Fort Knox and had an individual that was behind a cage, and you had to have a PO to come through and get your materials issued to you. Your flat rate pricing of your parts is not updated. Time and material parts are not priced correctly. And we talked about this. Do not properly recover manufacturer's warranty. And then again, we talked about, do you have a direct-to-truck stock replenishment system with your local distributor? I worked for a distributor, and it was a very key component of ours to make sure that we understood what the contractor worked with, dealt with, and what their struggles were on a daily basis. And I'd like to think that one of the reasons we were so successful in that distribution company is because we knew exactly what you guys deal with on a day, you guys and gals deal with on a day-to-day basis, because I had walked it and talked it and lived it and struggled with so many things. And again, I have failed many, many times in a lot of different things. But the one thing I do not do is when I fail them, I find out why I failed, and then I fix it, and I won't make the same mistake twice. All right, you want to learn more? Here's my information. Again, email would probably be the best way. If you call and leave me a voicemail, I will call you back before the end of the business day or within 24 hours if it's later in the evening. Mark your calendars for July 18th when we conclude our three-part series. But now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy. And do we have a lot of questions that have come up?
We've got a few questions that have come through, but this would be the time, guys. If you have questions, just feed them into the question prompt on your control panel there. I see someone raising their hand. Let me go back to one of the early questions that we received. This question came from Carl Dupold. His first question is, Brad, what does it mean to be coachable, and why should you care?
Because we can learn so many things. I just got done saying that I've failed so much, so many times, and not only in my career, but in my life. And being coachable, being willing to not be afraid to ask for help from a mentor, someone that has been there, done that, helped me transpose and turn me in. I'd like to think I'm very successful, and I firmly believe that because I was coachable and was like a sponge to a few mentors in my life that have turned me into the success I have today. Very good question.
And again, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but he kind of a follow-up to that is, how confident does someone need to be to ask for help when it's needed?
You know what? I would say you don't have to be confident. If you need help, then you've identified that you need help, and that is the beginning. That's the beginning to becoming a success. Not being afraid to reach out and say, Brad, someone else that you know, and I'm lost. I'm good at what I do, but I don't know the things that I think you know. Would you be willing to help me? I have so many examples. I just got a video sent to me from a friend of mine that is now a very dear friend. Tracy has seen his videos before, and he owns a plane and just sent me a video of him flying over Tennessee because he wanted to come down and visit Gatlinburg, but he started out and didn't know anything. And today, he wouldn't be afraid to tell me. His name is Chad Simpson. He owns 3 companies in Central United States, of course, Central Ohio. And he is very, very successful and makes more money than he ever thought possible. And he is still one of my guys that I will always hold dear to my heart because he wasn't afraid to ask for help.
Yep. So really, Brad, it's really a pride thing, wouldn't you say? I mean, most of the guys listening to this, guys and gals listening to this webinar, are probably self-starters. They're entrepreneurs. They took a big risk jumping out there and saying, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to start my own company. Prideful, right? But you can't be so prideful that you're afraid to ask for the help. So I think what you're saying, in a way, is it's putting that pride aside and saying, there's probably somebody out there who can do this and help me, right?
You know what? That sparks something right there. What you just said, Tracy, is I wish that we had all 200 of you in a class together, that we could interact and do this together in person, because Tracy mentioned earlier I was a deputy sheriff for quite some time, for 10 years, and then I was injured and forced to retire. And then, lo and behold, I fell into the HVAC industry and became a general manager of a very large company. And I'm always using the analogy, if I had a choice to pick the less stressful of the 2 jobs, I would much rather be a deputy sheriff going to a domestic violence call or a bank robbery in progress because I know what I'm walking into. At least I know to be prepared of what I'm coming up against. As a GM of a company with 90-some employees and the average family being 3 to 3.5 people per family, I was responsible for putting food on the table for 270 people a day. And you want to talk about stress. And if I wasn't willing to ask for help and learn and be coachable by others that had run companies that size, I wouldn't have been successful doing what I do at that company. So you're exactly right, Tracy.
A couple of you are asking to please email copies of the presentation, and can we listen to this presentation again? Yes, you can listen to the presentation. It's being recorded, and at the end, it'll take a minute to kind of process, but you will all receive a link to listen to the recording via email. And then Brad, we can send a PDF copy of the presentation to everyone listening, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, another question we're getting, this is from JB Bond. He would like to know, why not separate residential and commercial for plumbing and electrical like we do for HVAC?
Very good question, JB. And this was I wanted this to be a high level webinar and not dive in, but absolutely. I had them separated in the two companies that I had both plumbing and electrical in. They were separated between residential and commercial. And then on my plumbing side, I even created a dig. For our digs, I had that as a separate department as well. But yes, you can divide that into commercial and residential, and I highly recommend you would do that.
Okay. Now we have a question from Lisa. And Lisa, I tell you what, I'm dying to just jump all over this question. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to let Brad answer it. And I have a feeling our answers are going to be very similar. But boy, you hit a nerve with me, so I'm going to answer it when Brad's all done. The question, Brad, is what, and she used all capital letters here, what one thing would you do today to increase revenue?
That's a great question. Starts with accountability. Increase revenue. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. Something like that. I've heard it told so many times. I don't know if Webster would agree with the exact verbiage of that. But my companies that I ran changed immediately when I started holding people accountable. Revenue grew when I held accountable. When I would put a process in place that said they were not allowed to leave a home until they got a review to be posted if it was a good call, because most calls are good. Most of them, are customers that are willing to take your laptop or take your iPad and type a quick review for us to go on our website. But when you start holding people accountable to a process or processes, like I said earlier, good people want to be held accountable. And that is how you get extraordinary results out of ordinary people.
There you go. I think your answer might be better than mine. But I guess what I would add to that, it can't be accomplished without the accountability. But what I would say to that, Lisa, is kind of what Comfort Institute is all about. It's what we teach here at Comfort Institute. Let's say you're doing 4 calls a day, 5 days a week. That's 20 times 4 weeks a month. We're
1,000 calls a year.
Whatever. All right, call whatever you want. 1,000 a year, right? I bet you 999.9999999% or 999.9 of those homes has an issue. They have a problem. They have something that they're living with that they don't like. It could be a hot room, a cold room, dust, allergens, humidity, you name it. There is something that homeowner is living with that they are unhappy about. But we don't ask enough questions. We don't listen to our customers. We don't look for the signs. You don't have to have fancy tools always. You simply need your eyes and ears, and really more your ears than anything. If you get a customer to start talking, just let them open up a little bit. They're going to tell you something that they don't like about their house. And that is a huge opportunity. And I'm not saying half the time, I'm saying all the time.
Yep.
Every customer. I can tell you some things I don't like about my house.
Yeah.
Brad, I bet you could too.
Oh, absolutely.
I bet everybody listening. And we're in the industry.
Yep.
We're in the industry, and there's something we don't like.
Heck, we don't change our own filters.
Right. We preach it, but sometimes we're guilty. Right. So I would say, Lisa, Brad he's he can't do what I'm saying without the accountability. So it really does boil down to that accountability. But I think we're both on the same page, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
All right, well, the questions are slowing down, and look at that, we're exactly at 1 o'clock on the dot. I'll kind of extend my thank you and my wrap up to see if there are any final questions that you guys want to send in here. But as Brad said at the beginning, this is part 2 of a 3-part series. I'm going to let Brad tell you a little bit more about what the 3rd part is coming up here in a little while. And thank you guys so much. I know it's hot out there. I know you guys are busy. I know it's a big deal to take an hour and set it aside and listen. I hope this was valuable. I hope we got the wheels turning. As Brad said, reach out to him. He's here to help you. He went really fast. We got one more question. See, I stalled long enough.
Good.
Andrea is asking, do you encourage performance-based pay?
Yes. If it's managed properly, Andrea, yes. That's a large animal there that we can talk about that offline. That's a big conversation, but as long as it's done ethically, I encourage that. And with what I mean by ethically, I mean there's got to be processes in place that have supervisors go out and look at large repairs, those types of things. When somebody tries condemning something, we've got to make sure that we are ethically taking care of the customer and doing the right things.
Awesome. All right. Well, Brad, do you want to remind everybody when part 3 is? Because I actually don't remember.
Yes, it is going to be July 18th. We have put out a survey to ask some questions. The content for July 18th is, I have an idea of what it's going to be, but we've asked some questions. I love the daily game plan, which you're probably going, what do you mean by that? It's accountability at its highest level, and knowing your daily break even. So what I mean by that is, do you know how much revenue your company has to do, not only to make a break even for that month, but how much does it need to do to make a 10, 15, 20% net profit? And that's when we really start making money, turning contractors into millionaires.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. All right, guys. Well, get out there. Happy selling, happy sealing, happy whatever you're doing. And we will hopefully see you back here on July 18th. And thanks so much, Brad.
Thank you. Take care.